I wanted to talk about a line of movement. I refer to a line of movement a lot as a line of deer movement. A line of movement is important to me. It's something that I coined that phrase years ago. In fact, it was in my first book, Whitetail Success by Design. That was in 2012. So a long time ago. I started writing that in 2011. And it was really about all those original concepts of mine that I wanted to write in a book because they were mine, and I wanted to talk about them and get them out there. And it's been a very successful book. But a lot of these concepts go back to then, including a line of deer movement and a line of buck movement in this case. So I just wanted to detail an area on our property that's been very successful. And I would say, off the top of my head, this area probably includes 40 acres. 30 acres, 40 acres, somewhere around there. So a portion of our property here in Minnesota. And I thought I like this because this is like an average size parcel that we can talk about. And of course, we do some things differently if this was the only piece we had as far as access and how we entered and exited the woods, getting in and out. Maybe we'd come in from the other side. We'd have other things going on. And we do have other things going on the other side of this ravine, for example. This ravine goes down like this, and it goes downhill from left to right. Really, this is based on a food plot right here. It's called the Hermit Plot. That's the food source that we have that supports this area. It's a little bit over 2 acres. It's called the Hermit Plot because we have Jim that's living on the property. He basically is a hermit. He has a camping lease, and he stays in a camper. And I'm not sure how long Jim will be around on here, but he's been around this area for about 20 years on this property, the parent property. And then now he's on the other property next door. One of the owners had asked him to leave here. He went over there, and then he's been there for about 10 years. So both spots, but he used to be here. He used to have a couple old dilapidated campers, and when they cleaned that up, they called it the Hermit Plot. They made it into a food plot, and when he moved out of that spot, so it's kind of stuck. We call him Jim, but when we didn't know him, we called him the Hermit. He literally was in that camper. We didn't know it for several months that we lived here. It was crazy. I mean, all of a sudden, heard a little music here and there, and one time we bought the property in June. We were out here turkey hunting in May, and I remember walking by. We had snow the end of October, and there were footprints coming out of the camper and going back in after it snowed for, I don't know, the snow had been on the ground for 3 or 4 days, and he came out. And it was pretty freaky to know someone had been in there that whole time, but we've gotten to know Jim, and that's where the Hermit Plot comes in. That's why we call it that, why it's locally called that. Consists of a 2+ acre food plot, 2 water holes, which are right here. See that one? And then this one right here. 2 water holes, 4 mock scrapes, 4 stands, 1 blind, and 5 dead bucks. And we've been very successful in this location of shooting multiple bucks that have been 4 and 5 years old. My daughter and her boyfriend Joey actually shot a buck this year that was 3-year-old. It was actually a really nice one. They shot out of the blind this year for gun season, so that was pretty cool. To have them here at the property and for them to shoot that buck here, their first Minnesota buck. So looking forward to having them come back. But Autumn and Joey did a good job with that buck. And then Dante shot one that was, we think, 4 years old. It wasn't 3. And then I shot one last year that was 4 or 5 years old. And then Jen shot one this year that was 4 or 5. And then I shot one that was 5+ this year too. So in this setup. So we've done really well here. And as far as line of movement, I want to draw it out with a blue pen, but we have bucks that there's bedding areas next to this food plot. The food plot's right here. And so that's where you hold a lot of does. A lot of does, this is a point going out up high like this. Goes downhill right alongside the point. On this side too is a ridge line. Goes downhill over here. And all the way down at the bottom, we have a stand down here. We call it the cairn. And so that stands down there low. And we have the water hole. We call that the Hermit water hole. We have the Hermit stand. We have a Hermit stand right here. And does it make sense? We try to keep as many does up here. That's why we have this next to the bedding area. And then this area down here is probably about 250 to 300 yards down and below. It's about 200 feet in elevation below the Hermit and about 250 to 300 yards away. So this becomes really high quality buck bedding area. So doe bedding up here, buck bedding here. Those bucks, they like to hit this water hole. They like to come up and hit this water hole, and then they go to the food source. Sometimes you'll have a buck that comes this way, hits the water hole, and goes back in. At night, they're going out to the ag fields eventually. But really what's been set up is that now we have other bedding areas way back here that creates movement this way too. So that gives some value to this stand. But really what we've done is we've given a huge opportunity for buck bedding way down below, 300 yards away from the food source. And then we have the doe bedding up close. We have water holes behind the buck bedding. We actually come in from the side through open timber all the way down to the edge of the bedding area, and then that's where we hunt. And then this one we come into the top, so this is more evening. This one's morning and evening. This one's tough to get into in the morning. The blind we can sit in for morning or evening. It goes up a little rise. We have switchgrass planted in front. Sumac is in front of it, about 10 feet high already, so we can hunt behind there. We have corn that usually goes out halfway in that field. That goes past an oak tree. We have a stand in the oak tree that we can hunt in the early season, blow our scent back into the corn because the deer aren't hitting the corn. If we don't have corn there, we can't use that stand. So this gives us some really good stand and blind location in a really compact area. If we included the other side over here, we actually have a couple small plots and one larger one over here. That would probably encompass more like 50 acres, 60 acres if we include that whole back side. Right now I'm just including all the woods, but if we added the edge and then there's ag land over on that side too. So in total in that 50 acres, we probably have about 4.25 to 5 acres of food plots. And that's about what we need. We actually have some corn in there, so that cuts into how many acres we have, meaning that we want that base amount of green, and you need about that base in corn to make corn viable. And so we could get by with about 3 acres of green in there, 2.5 acres. But when we add that corn, you really have to bump up the overall acreage in that. So it gives us some great opportunity for hunting morning, evening back here, going through an open hardwood draw to get there. Gives us a lot of evening stand, evening, and then a morning stand over here. So it gives us that complement of both morning and evening stands. You can imagine winds down here. We get a lot of different winds because there's a steep hillside, and if that wind's coming this way from the northwest, it blows back up the draw in the morning. It does the same in the evening. It spills down in here in the bottom. So we can hunt that actually with quite a bit of wind. We can hunt it with straight west. We can't hunt it with southerly winds because that blows right back up the draw. But then south winds, we can actually flip back around here and hunt this stand up here. Evening, we can hunt with easterly winds, southerly winds out of this stand, and then anything south and east out of this stand right here, sometimes a little bit southwest. So this is a kind of setup I like, where we have that buck bedding area that would be in that typical location. In fact, this is low. A lot of people don't realize that bucks, there's people out there who say bucks always bed high, and that couldn't be further from the truth. If the food's up high, they bed low. If the food's down low, they bed high. If there's food high and low, they bed in the middle. Does bed next to the food. And so you want to give them that location. It's called bedding by layered bedding, does first, then bucks. That's next to that food plot. And in this case, if this is your type of property, you'd have bucks way to the back, does towards the front. Stand locations, we'd have stand locations over here too. By the time we put it all together, we have morning and evening stands good for every wind direction, multiple access routes in and out to get into stands. And if we added the other side, can imagine how many we can go in all the way through here. There's actually ways under the cover of darkness, if we wanted to, we can actually go through the woods and pop back out another area. So there's a lot of ways that we can get in and out in a situation like this, but it all starts by really defining that line of movement. Give yourself some purpose. Why are the bucks moving from point A to point B? Why are they in that buck bedding area? Well, you have to have doe bedding somewhere else along with food. You have to give them a food focus. We have water holes that are appropriately spaced. Those water holes are about 300 yards apart and 200 feet in elevation. So big difference between the completely different movements from top to bottom. So more morning movements, afternoon. I actually shot my buck down here in the morning. Jen shot her buck this year down there in the evening. Dante shot his buck in the evening. I shot an evening buck right there. And then Autumn and Joey shot their buck in the morning out in the plot. So a real mix, again, And it's because you have that separation. If you didn't have that separation, if everything was trying to be sandwiched right in here, it makes it a lot harder to get in and out of stands without spooking deer on food, without spooking deer in the bedding area. So by drawing this out over about 300 yards, it gives us that depth where we can actually house bucks back in the bedding area. There's a purpose for them there. And then it gives them a direction of travel and movement, whether they're going to the water hole, going to another water hole. And it's funny, they'll go from one water hole from top to bottom. It's not actually that they're getting a drink all the time, although most of the time they do if they're rutting and moving a lot. But they're really checking for does. Those become doe hotspots. And I talk about linking those doe hotspots together. And whether it's water holes or bedding areas or food sources, there's a lot going on to make sure that that movement is sustained all hunting season long by keeping food in the food plot, making sure we have the right mix so there's food all season long. And then also making sure there's water in those water holes, that we cut those bedding areas and improve on those. And we'll be expanding those a little bit this year. We're actually going to add some more bedding back down here so that actually supports more bedding. We have some cut bedding on the other side over here already. So we want to get some in the middle there. So that's that middle bottom area is becoming very important down in the bottom of that draw for holding bucks. And that's what we see. We have cameras. We've had some reveal cameras down there that we've dedicated for a long time that they just sit there. We can't go down and hunt in those areas down, especially in the draw, but we know those bucks are down there and using. So anyways, I hope that makes sense. I know it's a lot of lines up here that we've made on the board. So I know we've used a portion of this, quite a big portion of this for our Hunting Hills and Thermals web class. And so understanding those thermals is a huge part of this. If you don't understand how the thermals work in the hills, it's not that they go up and down. It's just like you know if you have a northwest wind going this way down that it's going to wrap back up that hollow over there in the morning. You have to know stuff like that. You have to know that it's going to lay down that direction in the evening. You have to know if it's a west wind, it's going to go right back uphill right over here. So you have to understand how the wind moves through the hills and thermals. That's critical for about half of you out there in the country. It's why we developed that web class. Dylan says it's our best one. We've had some really good feedback on it. It's been pretty popular. And if you guys want to check that out, links in the description. It's on the website. And I have to announce, we're just letting people know this. Early part of February, middle of February, we'll have our website up for our seed company, WHS Wildlife Blends. We'll have our whole complement of seed that we're going to have for the year. We might add 1 or 2 other products throughout the summertime, but we'll have 11 or 12 that'll be on the website right in middle of February. You can place your orders. We'll be shipping out seed the end of February. It's a big step for us. We really appreciate the sales we had over the last summer. End of July we started, and we've already sent orders to you guys out there in 43 different states, and almost 2,000 orders. So we really appreciate the support. Appreciate watching the video. I hope this helps you. That's the bottom line. You don't buy any seed, you don't buy any web classes, hire us or anything. We'll keep this stuff coming. We really want to help you out, and that's why I keep the content over and over again. Dylan and I are finishing a 2-day right now. This is the last video. This is video number 13, right?
Yep.
Dylan's pumping his fist right there.
Let's go.
So,
good work, man.
So then I come back, and February 13th and 14th, we have to shoot 10, you told me.
We're spending Valentine's Day together.
At least the first half of the day. What a shame. But anyways, hope you guys like this one and some of the extras that go along with it and imagery. And most of all, this is that big picture planning window. January, February time is a great time to really start on some of these projects and make sure they're lined up for hunting season, because none of this stuff takes a lot of time. It might take a little bit of time to work on and do. It takes time to plan. But when you do it, like we did last year down in this whole setup was all last year. Starting this time of year, we shot 2 mature bucks out of there. We expect more great things to come for the future. That's a really good one. It just took some time to plan, but it's for this season. You're not building and doing stuff for 5 years from now. If you are, that's taking too long. You need to refocus on priorities. And that's the bottom line. That's why I really want to show you this. And take this into your bank of knowledge and experience and really build something special. I hope you do for going into this hunting season this fall. Hey, I'm really excited to introduce to you our Hills and Thermals web class. It's something we worked on all year. We're trying to put lots of facets of scouting, aerial imagery, diagrams on the whiteboard to really teach you how the wind moves through hills and how you should find bedding areas, how it relates to deer movements in general, how that relates to this is a bedding area stand, this is a food source afternoon stand. We really tried to put this together and offer you a complete picture of how to navigate hills and find better success consistently where you hunt.